call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Toohill,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
So agenda, or the council, the agenda has one deletion tonight. The public forum and appearances, Robert Stone is not going to be discussing tonight. However, I do want to point out that he had a diagram about how to go around the roundabout. I talked to the fire chief today, and he said that's all accurate. And I believe that Melanie had also put something out on Facebook some time ago. And it's definitely worth a read or a look. So make sure you understand how to go around the roundabout when there's emergency personnel coming to the roundabout or in the roundabout, so you know what to do. Any other changes to the agenda, council? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the September 11th, 2023 council meeting. Approval of the September 15th, 2023 payroll in the amount of $147,545.96. Acceptance of the Carnegie Museum board minutes. Acceptance of the library board minutes. Approval of liquor license for the Tipsy Travelers at 117 East Burlington Avenue. Approval of ACH payment to the Department of Revenue in the amount of $37,107.10. Approval of claims in the amount of $1,388,945.56. Claims over $75,000 include claim to Southeast Iowa small cities and counties for insurance in the amount of $76,433.67, and Wicks Construction for Highway 1 in the amount of $828,641.72.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, moved by Anderson, second by Gandy. Any discussion?
I've reviewed all the claims. Everything appears to be in order, so I recommend approval.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, go ahead and call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Rasmussen. Yes. Toohill,
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
The next action item is consideration of request of funds. Oh, shoot. For Convention and Visitors Bureau. I just lost my whole place here. And so that has to do with Terry Baker contacted me last week, said there is a grant that she can apply for wayfinding sign. That's $10,000, but the city council would have to provide a $2,000 cash match. So that, if you approve it, that would come from local option sales tax. We have applied for previous grants before and have not received them, so this would not do her whole project that she'd like to do, but it would be a start.
So, is it $2,000 that we commit, or $2,000 if she receives the grant? If the Convention Centers Bureau receives the grant?
If she receives the grant,
Okay,
then we're
so it's
committing
contingent,
2,000.
contingent on receiving the grant?
Correct.
I see. I would move to approve.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Gandy,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes. Okay, next action item, consideration to accept Lamson Woods Natural Playscape project as final.
I don't know that I need to say much other than if you haven't been down to Lamson Woods recently, you should go down there and see it. It's very nice looking. The playground is finished. Partner Construction of Fairfield did a good job on the project. As a part of the consent agenda, you have approved the retainage pay estimate. I'm assuming that's contingent upon approving this here. And there is a 1-year guarantee period that would go into effect starting tonight, assuming you approve this on the project. So,
Stephen, I have a couple questions. So last time I was down there, there's still some, snow fencing, orange fencing around? Is that staying up through the winter?
I believe that Pam there's a little bit of a slope on one side of the project that's been seeded, and I think Pam is leaving that up until the seed gets established.
And that was my second question, is had it been seeded yet?
Yep, I was just down there on Saturday, and there's
Okay.
grass poking
Growing.
up, looking good, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I was there last night, trying to be a kid.
Yep.
Swing.
Yeah, there's lots of
On the
ropes and stuff to
ropes.
climb on, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's a really cute little playground down there.
So,
Yeah, it's very cute. So is there a motion to approve?
I would move to approve.
Moved by Gandy, second by Rasmussen. Any other questions? Not, please call the roll.
Gandy?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
So before we move on to the next action item, I do have a certificate of appreciation for the Dowd family because they are the one that put this in. And so Deb is here tonight. So this, well, I'll read it. Come up here. Come on. Deb, come on up by the podium. You certainly can. So, this certificate of appreciation says the city of Fairfield recognized Deb Dowd, Jack Dowd, and Megan Dowd Robbins for the Lamson Woods Playground. Thank you for your generous donation to the city of Fairfield. And again, thank you so much. It's a great addition to that corner of the world down there. And her son lives right across the street, so it's really wonderful, you know, for your grandkids.
I
So,
was there also Saturday with my little granddaughter, and there was like a lot of families there from like, one family had like 5 kids from age maybe 8 till like teenagers. So it was really fun to see how the park could actually take all the different ages, you know, and the kids can use it to the best of their capabilities. But before, Megan wanted me, my daughter couldn't be here, my son couldn't be here. Megan's traveling, and Jack and Darren just had a newborn, so they're pretty busy. But Megan and Darren worked really closely with this, and so I'm here representing everyone, even though I didn't work too much on this project. But we wanted to be sure that we thanked these other people also. We were excited that we could do a project that was local to Fairfield. And so we were really happy because we've been working with 1% for the Planet, an organization that we donate to different places throughout the world. And this time we were able to link up with Jefferson County Trails and Council to be able to foster this project. They fostered this project. So a big thanks to them, to the other donors, Greater Jefferson County Foundation, Trails Council, Morgan Tree Service, also thanks to John Loyne, Stephen Pedrick at French Reniker, and of course the Fairfield Parks team for making this happen. Special thanks to the Park Design Committee team, Darren Dowd, Kim Brose, Stephanie Wharton, and Megan Dowd. And we're very happy to have this unique type of park adjacent to the trail system at Lamson Woods. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And she didn't say anything about their business, but I did a little poking around, and their Cotto brand was named in the top 3 vegan,
Non-dairy.
non-dairy. I was going to say ice cream, but that's not really right. But
Well, yeah, you can't say ice cream legally,
Yes.
but it is ice cream, and it
Yeah.
does actually taste like ice cream. It doesn't taste like, it's made from avocado. And people are really surprised because when you taste it, it's very creamy, and it really does taste like ice cream.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for us to be able to provide something that was unique, and also had some heart-healthy fat, and it actually tastes good.
yeah, so she's saying, you know, it's like ice cream. It's non-dairy. You can get it here in town, and you have different flavors. And the dark chocolate is really good. I highly recommend.
Very good.
So, and it's cheaper than those other 2 brands I saw that were in the top 3. So, go out and get you some. Support our local businesses. Anyway, again, thank you again so much. It's a beautiful addition to that area, and it looks natural, like it belongs there.
That's, I think that's what the team really wanted, the group that really worked on that. They wanted it to actually fit into the wooded area.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to the next action item. Consideration to accept the 2022 sewer lining project as final.
Obviously, by the name, this was a project that most of it went on last year. We waited this spring. They needed to come back and do the grout testing of the sewer laterals. So when the liner goes in the sewer main, then they cut out holes for each of the sewer laterals and then grout where that connection is made. And that crew had gotten delayed. So they came back this spring and did that work. Then they provided us with videos to confirm that all the work had been done and tested, and it took me a few months to go through all those videos to confirm everything was done. So now all of that is done, and we're requesting that the project be accepted as final. I'm also requesting, because the video is set on my desk, I was working towards it, but because the work has been completed for a while, that I request you release the retainage at this time rather than waiting the 31 days.
Motion to approve, or to consider 2022 sewer lining project complete and release retainage.
Second?
Moved by Anderson, second by Gandy. Are there any questions? Not, please call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Next action item to consideration to award sludge removal, hauling, and disposal services.
So this is a quote package that the wastewater treatment plant puts out to remove the sludge that's in the big harvest store, grain silo looking tanks that are out there. This is a 2-year contract based off of the actual gallons of material hauled. It gets applied to fields that, crop fields that the city already has lined up and agreements with. And these companies do the hauling and then the paperwork that's required for DNR for that hauling. We received 2 quotes, one from Ecosystems of Ottumwa, Iowa at $69,600 for the 2 years, and one from JDL of Stockport at $79,100. Both are great contractors. We worked with JDL last year, but we would recommend approval of Ecosystems at the low bid of $69,600.
I make the motion that we accept the bid from Ecosystems for sludge removal.
Moved by
For 2
Flournoy.
years.
Second by Rasmussen. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. The next 2 items are related here. Consideration of tax abatement application for 307 West Grimes, and then the same for 309 West Grimes. And, I question why this was 3 years later, so apparently Mr. Bozallen thought that he had done this request for this tax abatement, but it wasn't put in, and Rebecca feels like we could approve it, but it really is gonna go to the assessors, and we don't know that he'll get anything.
right,
But we have confirmed it didn't happen?
right, he said it happened quite some time ago.
No, but we have confirmed we never did the tax abatement?
Correct. Yeah. It wasn't applied for.
Let's give
There's no time limit on submitting that, is there?
Well, it's based on your assessed value, so if it's already been brought
Well, they won't
up-
award it retroactively.
Yeah,
It's up to the auditor's office,
Assessors.
assessed.
Assessor's office.
or assessor's office, I mean. Because all we're doing is saying, go ahead and submit. We're not
Right.
approving it or acknowledging that it's correct or anything like that.
Right.
Right.
Move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
let's do one at a time. 307 West Grimes,
Move to approve.
moved by Gandy, second by Flournoy. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Gandy,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And then,
I do have one question on these real
Yeah.
quick, though. Is it okay that the application is dated 4 years ago?
Oh, I didn't check the date on it, but
Because it's signed by Scott Vaughn and dated,
I wondered about the
that's,
Scott
that's
Bond.
the building application. Yeah, the building permit. That should
that's
have
the
been.
building permit?
Yeah,
Not the, okay.
correct.
right.
Because I wondered with that signature if it was still valid, since he's no longer employed here.
Yeah, he signed it 9/12.
If when he signed it, he was an employee and it was
Right.
appropriately signed, I think it's okay.
Yeah, because he signed the tax abatement application, 9 of 23. Yeah.
9 and 23.
Yeah.
Okay, I was looking at the wrong date. I got it now.
Yeah.
So I would do a motion to approve 309 West Grimes.
Yes.
Okay, moved by Anderson.
Second.
Second by Toohill. Any discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Anderson?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Next is the matter of drawing specifications, form of contract and engineer's estimates for 9th and Jefferson water main improvements. go ahead and speak
Do
to
you want
this
me
and
to
then we'll
talk now
open
or
the.
wait
Yeah,
until
go ahead
after the
and
public hearing?
talk and then I'll open the public hearing.
Okay. I can sit down if you want me to.
No, it's all right, go ahead.
Okay. This is a project that we set the public hearing for last meeting. This is about 1,300 linear feet of water main on Jefferson, 9th, and Adams Streets. And the proposed schedule for the project is that bids would be due October 5th at 11 o'clock, which should give you, we should have those tabulated so you can approve the low bid at your October 9th council meeting. The intent is that this work could start this fall if the contractor wanted to, but we set the completion date to be June 7th of next year, so they could also start next spring if they so choose. So I don't know what else you need to know from me about the project. Maybe one thing that the council would be interested in is Jefferson Avenue is pretty busy. And we're talking about from 8th to 9th, so if you think where the railroad used to go through, it's that section of Jefferson. And that will be closed when the project is under construction.
Both
traffic-wise.
directions?
Yes. It's just not wide enough to be able to just close one lane, and there's too much traffic to be able to do that. So that could be, a couple months or something.
So if they were to start the project this fall, but have to stop due to weather, is there any chance that would be closed through the entire winter?
I doubt it. I think we would have that cleaned up and opened
Okay.
through the winter. We've also written something in the spec that we'd like to have it open if they do pull off like that. So it's actually in the spec just because it's a busy area to do that. So, I believe our estimate was in the stuff that we submitted. It's an estimated at $230,000 project. I don't know if there's any other questions from the council. We can do the public hearing.
Okay, so I'll open the public hearing. Does anybody want to speak about this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and move on to the action item. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Moved by Gandy,
Second.
second by Anderson. Any discussion?
One more question. If, for the part that they're gonna tear out, are they replacing it with concrete? With,
Ultimately, yes.
Okay.
If we're talking about the overwinter situation,
No,
it's a whole other
permanent-
discussion.
permanent
It would
fix.
just be granular probably in
Right.
that situation, but yeah, no.
Okay.
Yes,
Any other questions? Not, please call the roll.
Gandy?
Yes.
Anderson?
yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes. Ordinance 1231, this is the third and final reading. This is an amendment to the fence ordinance. I will open a public hearing. Does anybody want to talk about that? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And council, you want to move this to the final or the third and final reading?
Move to approve.
Moved by Gandy,
Second.
second by Rasmussen. Any discussion?
Just a quick question. What got changed when it went back to committee? Does-
Up to 4
The-
feet? Go ahead.
The side yard to the front yard, so you can have a garden in the front yard now that does not have to extend around the side of the house.
You can have a fence around that garden?
Yes, you can
Okay.
have a fence around a garden in the front
Front
yard.
yard,
that
up
doesn't-
to 4 feet.
I believe that's what it was, right, up to
Okay.
4 feet, but it doesn't,
Okay.
it was originally written that it had to wrap from the side of the house around to the
Okay.
front, but it doesn't have to wrap around.
Okay.
Is that right, John?
You take
Yes.
it down every year after the season, so.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Just seasonal.
Okay, any
Thank
other
you.
questions? No, please call the roll.
Gandy?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Okay, the next ordinance, 1232. Again, this is potentially the third and final reading. This is consideration of the maintenance code extension. And I will open it up to the public hearing first. Is there anybody that wants to speak to this? Okay, a few. So, Tammy, why don't you go ahead?
Hi. I wasn't sure how much voice I would have by today, so I sent all my comments already earlier, so.
Can you tell us your name and what ward you're in, please?
Sorry, I'm Tammy DeShepper, and I'm in Mr. Gandy's ward, which is 2? So, just to kind of recap, I just had two main objections. The first is that it's not really very clearly written. There's a lot of feelings in there, like we feel there's a safety issue, but it's not really very well defined. And when the inspectors show up, it's like what they feel they should write people up for. That is also not very well defined, because the code as written, the 74, 76 pages, is in totality a description of a safe house. So you can't just like pick and choose out of there. If there are areas that would be more or less that you would want to focus on, those are things that I think should be called out ahead of time so people can know that. And then when homeowners are given 30 days to fix the problem, they can get extensions if the city feels like giving them an extension, not like if there's a good faith effort to find a contractor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of like the difference between saying, you know, the city council meets every Monday at 7, and city council meet when they feel like they have something they want to say. One is very clear, you know exactly what's expected. The other one, you know, maybe we meet, maybe we don't. So the clarity, I think, is a little lacking. And then the second one is I don't think a lot of the ramifications have been fully thought out on this. So there's the practical implications. So again, if somebody comes to the house, is the inspector going to cite you for every one of the things that are missing from that 74, 76 pages of code? Because houses built in the 1920s probably need a lot more than houses that were built in the 1980s. And then also there's a severe lack of tradespeople in town. So who is going to be doing all of this work? Because it seems like there's quite few houses that are targeted to begin with. I think it was over 500 was the number that was given at the first reading. You know, personal story. That first week of July, that storm that came through, we had a tree that dropped through the bedroom roof out of our house. And, you know, we still have the big hole, we have the big tarp. I mean, we finally got on somebody's list, yay. But they're not sure they're gonna get it done before winter. So, I mean, even when we have insurance money and we're looking, it's still gonna be, you know, 9 months possibly before we can get the roof fixed. So, and then the last one is, if it is determined that somebody can't afford to make the fixes, because it was also stated that the goal of this is either to force people to fix up their houses or to move those houses into hands of somebody who can fix it up, where are those people to go? I mean, this isn't actually addressing housing in Fairfield, because it's the same number of housing stock. You're just moving kind of a shell game. You're just moving people around. So when the low-income people get kicked out of their homes, where are they to go? Because we don't have a lot of low-income options here in town. So it just really seems like it's more of an attempt at gentrification, where you might not be looking at the poverty anymore, but it's still there. Because one of the stats that I guess I didn't realize myself, the last year that I could find was the spring of 2020. Over 45% of the kids here are on reduced lunch program, or lunch assist programs. So we have a real poverty problem in town, not a unthinking homeowner problem in town. So I just wanted to ask the city council to table this motion for more consideration of the after effects. Sorry, my voice is going.
Thank you. Thank you for your
But if you had
comments.
any questions or anything, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions too?
I do. Mr. Shepard?
Yep.
Am I pronouncing it correctly? You mentioned the concept in the chapter of feel. Is the word feel used in the code?
The word feel is not used, but the phrasing is all vague. Like if it's seen that there's a safety issue, but what is a safety issue? It's not defined. So anything that's not defined is just going kind of on a feeling. And then like the whole, you can get extensions, but there's nothing in there that says how you can get extensions. So depending on how the person is feeling that day, they may or may not grant you an
I
extension
mean, I'm
on
not
the
looking at
30-day
the language,
fix.
but
Yeah.
what's the language when it comes to extension? Do you recall what the language is actually in the?
It just said that you can apply and at the discretion of the city, which is kind of legalese for how they feel.
And also, you mentioned in your comments that the code would allow the city to force people out of their homes.
Well, that was in the very first reading. stated intent of this code was to either force people to fix up the properties or to move those properties into the hands of people that can fix it up. I put a timestamp on the email that I sent where you can, look and see. Now, if that was a misstatement, that's
No,
fine.
I'm just clear. Is that language in the actual code itself?
No,
That the
it
idea of
was in
force?
That you get, you fines start accruing. So I assume it's probably going to be a slower process thing where those fines are going to go on to your city taxes. You can't pay your city taxes. After your city taxes can't be paid for X amount of time, then, you get foreclosed on your home. So it's not an immediate thing directly from the city. I'm just assuming that it's going to play out through the taxes because that's the way it seemed like it was reading.
And you know that this is actually an upgrade of a property maintenance code that we've already had in place for some time.
For rental properties, yes. Although that, with the Orange City thing, that's kind of calling that into question, the legality of that, because they were finding that entering people's homes to do those inspections was an unconstitutional use of right. So I'm very interested to see what the city attorney was able to find out about that this week.
I guess my point was that it's a code that the language has been tried and tested throughout in other jurisdictions besides here. It's not something new that we're looking
Well,
at.
it seems like usually when you have the property code, it's set out so that, like, if you do a renovation, it has to be up to code. And that makes sense because you're doing something new. It's not going cold into somebody's house and going, whoa, look at everything that's wrong and you need to fix all this for your house to be safe. So it's kind of different.
So what is it you're proposing then? A reconsideration in what way?
To table it for now, to think about, because, like, for example, the example that I gave, so let's say there's a safety concern. It would be nice if that was more defined, like windows are out, hole in the roof, porch at what would that be, more than a 90-degree angle, like a 120-degree angle, something that's specific around there, not just, ooh, that house looks like it was built in 1920. I bet they don't have GFIs in their bedrooms. Or in their bathrooms. We better go figure that out. And then once the inspector gets in, what are they looking for? Are they looking for everything in all 76 pages? Is there like a top 10 hit list? And if there is a top 10 list, let's call that out and say, hey, these are the things we're really concerned about.
Can we ask Weston how he decides? And he's not just going to drive by a house and say, knock on the door and go in. That's not going to happen, I don't think.
Well, no,
That's what
he
you're
has to
suggesting,
say, it has to go through a process. But,
Well, I want to ask Weston what that
So-
process
oh,
is.
yeah.
If we could, I'd like to hear from everybody, and then we'll have Weston address any other questions that people have.
Okay.
So if you'll be patient, let's have.
Sure.
So Ray, go ahead. Thank you, Tammy.
Hi, my name's Ray Griffin. I'm in the Fifth Ward. I have a question. Why are we accelerating this third reading of this ordinance? We're getting into the fall months, and I can see an overzealous code officer come in about November when he starts getting comfortable and saying, oh, this needs painted, this needs done. It happened earlier when we got the other aesthetics officer or code officer, whatever you want to call him. I had a trailer in my front yard, a brand new trailer, and it's winter, and I do I push a little snow for the VFW, all free, and for some of the elderly people. Well, instead of taking it over to another place, the trailer, I leave it there for a few days, and if it's not going to snow, then it's gone. Well, I get a notice in the mail. Move your trailer or you're going to get a fine and all that. That's a bunch of bullshit in my book. So what's the acceleration on this project? Because someone's going to get in there and you're going to see some letters going out in January, in January or December, that, oh, you need to fix your soffits, you need to do this, and you got 30 days to do it or 60 days or something like that. I don't think that's right.
Okay, well, this has gone through the normal process, Ray, and this just happens to be the final reading. However, we are going to hear from our city attorney because he also, I think, has some things that he wants to discuss, and so I'm not sure that this is going to go through the final reading tonight. We'll find out what the council
One
wants
last
to do.
question. If the city code, when I had to move this brand new trailer out of my front yard, and I don't leave it there, my house looks fine down on Fillmore, and the code reads, no motorized vehicles in your front yard. Does this guy know the difference between a motorized vehicle and a trailer? No, yeah, I get the goddamn notice, I don't think it's right.
Well, I think
It's aesthetics. He's an aesthetics officer. That's a bunch of crap.
Okay.
I just want to let you know, that's the
Yeah.
way I feel. Because what the code says, you should be able to go by the code. That's it. I just
Thanks,
had to
Ray.
voice my opinion.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it. And we have one more, I believe.
My name is Mark Chavez, and I'm from the 3rd Ward. And I'm also requesting to table this. It appears that there's more issues with the community at large that are coming up because of the codes. The codes are not like other small cities. This is an international code that was adopted, and the public was announced that it was going to be taken and then it was voted on. And I don't think the public really understood what this was getting into. In regards to city inspector and his rights, based on what the city administrator offers in his job description for him to do, depending on what the city attorney says it's legal or not legal. I was present at a house where Scott Vaughn, the previous city inspector, walked into the house, and he had already harassed the homeowner, and he walked straight into the house and started talking to me. And I said, well, the owner is not here right now. And then the owner came running in and said, what are you doing inside my house? You don't have permission to be inside my house. And he said, oh, the door was open. And he let me in. And I said, I didn't let you in. I was inside. You walked in. And then the owner said, you and I have a history. You don't have a right to come into my houses. You know that. Okay. Now, there was no trespassing sign on the house, which I'm aware that if we don't want him to come in, we have to go out of our way to put no trespassing. But what else do we have to do as residents and homeowners to prevent an abuse of this person coming into our home without our permission, if we're not there, or if we are there? You know, my concern is the elderly. They don't know what's going on. He can walk in and say, knock on the door, and then they let him in, and then he points all these things out. They may not have the money, they may not have the time. If it's winter, they don't have the energy to do any of these repairs. And based on, you know, this is just business. So his point is going to be, well, I have to take care of these people, I have to do these things. And so all the notices will go out, all the penalties and all that will go out. Now, there is a house that was foreclosed by the city, or the city received by foreclosure. So it's not like the worst scenario can't happen. You know, the person can go from from simple fine to escalating to then losing their house. That is possible, and it has been done. So my concern is that we as a community should come together to bring up these concerns that are in the 76 page, which I would like to know if every single person here has read them, because Paul Gandy mentioned that he did not know the codes that were in there. He was asking her, the community member. But you guys voted on this for us, representing us. And if you don't know what the codes are, then how can we trust that it's going to be implemented the way you say it is? You know, it's like she said, there's a lot of vagueness in there. And all I like to do is just bring this together and then see how we can better assist as a community to say, hey, let's work this together so that we're not fighting each other as to what he can do, what he can't do, what you guys want, what you guys don't want. We have the property committee, which is available to be able to answer any questions and help us with this. We also have the resilience action committee, and we have the sustainability committee. There's a lot of people available to help us revisit this to see if this is actually a wise thing to implement. Again, this is not something that other like small towns are doing. This is something that we took on as a progressive thing to do to help our city revamp, which I think we all want to do. We all want our city to improve and better, but maybe this is not the way to do it so abruptly, and especially if we don't know what the rights are for us as homeowners and what the rights are going to be implemented based on the inspector, the administrator, and the city, because to be honest, you guys just vote on things based on what is the best scenario for the city, but sometimes saying yes to something could be a backlash, and that's what the city attorney brought up last meeting, that there was a concern that, you know, if he walked into somebody's house for probable cause, that could be considered not legal, and that was proven in other cities. So I would just like to table it for now to be able to ease the concerns of the community, create the discussion and the conversations between your committees and the community at large. And then if we can go in that direction, then that's great. And if not, then we have to figure out what can we do as residents to say, we don't like this ordinance, what are our options? Because I don't know what the options are. I mean, you pass the laws, what is our rights to, we can't say, well, you can, reverse voting for a certain city council member or a certain city person. We can't just go back and fix that. But what are our options, and that we don't know. So that's where we talk to the city attorney, the city administrator, the property committee, to see what our options, because maybe there's one or two ordinances which are, totally invalid. And like I said, if everybody hasn't read them all and understand them, because that's the other thing, comprehend them, then something could cause an issue in the future. And it's just, I think the best way to go for the future of Fairfield, to make the best Fairfield possible, is to work together. So that's my
Thank you.
concern.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Mr. Chavez, let me just clarify. I didn't say I hadn't read it. I was asking, I didn't have the code in front of me.
Right.
I was asking our citizens to speak to that.
Yes.
So I just want to clarify that.
If you read it, then you would know what.
No, I haven't memorized it, but I have read it.
Right.
But I didn't remember every word in it.
Right.
That's all.
That you expected her to know.
No. I just asked her about one particular word. Was it in there? That's all.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Does anybody else want to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. First off, John, you want to speak to what you found out? Or?
Yes, I do. And I'm going to join the crowd as far as asking you to table this again. I'm not sure that the crowd understands the consequence of tabling it. It means you take it up off the agenda and you bring it forward at the next meeting. So this isn't going away. It's just coming back for a reconsideration at the next meeting because it was tabled at this meeting. So you've all asked to have this picked up from the agenda for this meeting with the idea it's going to be considered at the next meeting. Are you all clear on that?
We don't know what our rights are. Can we ask to table it for a year, for a month?
No?
No.
So what are our options?
Basically, you keep on asking for
Yeah.
tabling, but at some point, the council's going to actually act on it.
So our only option is to continue tabling it until we come to an agreement as a community and as a city.
Well, if there's enough interest in putting additional things into this ordinance beyond what's already there, which it's a small Bible if you take the whole act that is being adopted by reference by the council, I guess the council will probably take a look at that, but mostly the council is going on the idea that the book that this is based on, which is an international code, is defining things that are safe, defining things that are standardized as far as quality, and trying to make that apply to our town. As far as the purpose of the upgrade here, part of it's rental housing. About 40% of the people that live in Fairfield are involved in some kind of rental arrangements. The rest of the housing in town is residential, single family, duplexes, etc. Depending on the ownership arrangements, it may or may not fit rental definition. But we've always inspected rental. We've had it since the early 90s, and that system has been working with habitability standards. Habitability standards are not the International Building Code standards. They're the standards that qualify people for HUD. And HUD has different programs where their standards are applied as far as appropriateness for subsidizing somebody's rent. You probably have heard of Section 202 rent subsidy or Section 8 rent subsidy. Those things we did not ever want to, from this council 30 years ago, step on people's toes as far as the way they had help with their rent. But most of those rentals are actually inspected probably more than other kinds of rentals that aren't subsidized because there's also an area housing agency that does HUD inspections for our multifamily apartment buildings, etc. So, having said that, one of the things that we mentioned at the last meeting, and I'm going to talk about a little bit at this meeting, is that there's a lawsuit out of Orange City, Iowa. Orange City, Iowa has to have a code somewhat like Fairfield's. Orange City, Iowa has inspections that are part of the rental code that they use. That particular part of the rental code in Orange City has been taken to court. There's a group of landlords that joined in the suit as plaintiffs. There are some tenants that joined as plaintiffs, and basically they went after Orange City and its administrator for being the face of the rental ordinance that they felt was unfair. So far the district court, and I talked with the city attorney at Orange City just today, there's a 22-page opinion that's been asked for reconsideration. They get 10 days to file that motion. They are asking for reconsideration. This just came down at the end of August and wasn't out until after Labor Day. But the reconsideration, the judge gets a couple weeks to react to the reconsideration request, and he hasn't filed a ruling yet on the reconsideration. When he does that, there's another 30 days that they're entitled to as far as appealing, either side. There's some things in it that the plaintiffs don't like. There's some things in it that the city doesn't like. The city attorney doesn't know if the town will appeal or not because the district court gave them a roadmap as far as the things that that court found to be wanting in Orange City's ordinance. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit here in a minute, is our ordinance does not have due process standards. It doesn't have some of the things that you would want to expect from our city code enforcement officer. Our city code enforcement officer is a fair-minded person. He doesn't walk into people's houses just because he sees their door open. He does if there is something that looks amiss, like dead animals in the backyard, things that are growing through a broken window in a house, vegetation overgrowth and things like that. We have about 15 nuisance definitions in our code, but we also, as far as safety standards, fire standards, structural integrity standards, we have Chapter 17, which I call the dilapidated housing part of our code. And many of our nuisance violations don't get filed under the nuisance ordinance. They get filed under the unsafe, dilapidated building ordinance. So we're looking at more than one part of our ordinance when we're doing this. But neither part of our ordinance right now has what the district court says you need to have in your ordinance. So my purpose in suggesting to the council they wait one more meeting before passing this is to allow us to amend this to put together some procedural, and again, I do not vote, and the council is the policymaker here. So they may not agree with this. That's what's going on up at Orange City. They're not sure that the council isn't split on whether to agree with the district court judge's perception of what is fair and what is not, as far as standards for the appropriateness of entry, the appropriateness of further search, of getting an administrative search warrant if you don't allow entry, and the overall perception in the ordinance that the city has the inherent right of entry. The League of Municipalities in Iowa has, ever since county and city home rule came about 50 years ago, felt that that power, which was inherent through the state statutes as recognized long-term, was extended further with the cities as far as home rule, so that, for instance, your utilities, your water and your sewer, those are utilities that most of you would want the city to come right away, if something broke down in your sewer system that was city responsibility instead of inside your house in the bathroom. Right away, if your water main breaks in your yard. And so the state statute and our city ordinance allows utilities the right of entry for things that are emergencies concerning those kinds of problems. But those kinds of problems aren't just utility problems. When our code enforcement hears about somebody having a roach infestation, a vermin infiltration, something that is a serious enough health hazard that he considers taking it to our county board of health or our own city health examiner, it's because we don't want to go outside of our Chapter 17 standards as far as what's safe, and we don't want to go outside of 15 different definitions of nuisance, and that's what he's there for. But the other side of it is, if somebody says, no, you're not coming into my house, it's not probably like it seems to you. We ordinarily do not go into a house until after we've given advance notice. And we ordinarily do not go further with that until after we've had a letter writing campaign. We have some very polite letters 2 or 3 times from our city code enforcement officer for most things that are observable that he feels should be corrected. We also have letters that I send out that say, here's what's going to happen next. We haven't had any kind of compliance or cooperation. At which point there will come a time when somebody is cited into our court, and at that point there are 7 or 8 different ways you can remedy things, all the way from a short period of time, adjusting it, something like a traffic ticket, all the way through. We have a house right now that's slated to be taken by the city. It's been in a state of disrepair for more than a decade. There's been some money escrowed to try to fix it. The owner was going to do it first. Now it's a point where the city's going to take it and fix it. Might have to be demolished. Those kinds of things, that's one end of the spectrum, the traffic citation type of scenario, all the way to the other end of the spectrum where we use something like condemnation or a procedure called 657A that gets tossed around here sometimes. So all of those things are in the package. They aren't talked about in this ordinance modification. This ordinance modification is basically adopting by reference an international code that is used throughout not just this country but other countries. And the purpose of that is not to make things harder for people, but to make things safer and healthier for people. So that's what it says in the very beginning purpose of the ordinance. What I want to say about here in Iowa and Orange City is the district court did enjoin Orange City from going any further with using their ordinance to the extent of right of entry, to the extent of administrative search warrants, and to the extent of going further in the direction of search, unless they apply standards, which I don't have to agree with this, but the district court judge basically said they need to have standards for probable cause like you have for search warrants in criminal cases. That's his opinion of the way the law should be interpreted. Orange City's got to decide if they're going to appeal that. This has been considered a couple times in Iowa appeal courts. It hasn't been to the Iowa Supreme Court. But guess what? It has been in federal court a couple times, both directions. In Zion, Illinois, I was talking to city engineer before we started tonight. She's looked at a case over there too. There was some abuse by the inspector. There was also some change by the city. They sort of cleaned up the ordinance, so to speak, so that the inspector did not have the ability to go off the tracks. We don't have that problem here as far as my opinion. We're not off the tracks, but we do not have some of the standards in our ordinance. And most towns in Iowa do not have them because most towns in Iowa have ordinances that have been proposed by the League of Cities And ever since city home rule, we've been using them, and generally, we haven't had a lot of lawsuits over it. But right now, if this lawsuit goes all the way up to Supreme Court, I guess we'll find out here in Iowa. What's helpful, though, is that some of the cases cited by the district court judge out at Sioux County, and that's where Orange City is, are cases from the neighboring state, Minnesota. In Minnesota, it's gone up the ranks from their trial court to their intermediate appeals court. They parallel Iowa all the way to their Supreme Court. And their Supreme Court has handed back guidelines on what they think a fair way to deal with this is. So that's where I'm going to go with the council as far as suggesting we put in some standards as far as the process. If we do reach that point where somebody refuses entry and we think it's important that we do search, then we'll have a due process procedure. As far as standards for the reasons for doing that, we'll have some of that outlined that we don't have in our ordinance right now. And I've got it tagged. I can tell you basically what the Supreme Court of Minnesota felt was a fair way. Absent, and you have to understand, there are some things that we have done occasionally that are the clearest emergencies. We've had, and sometimes these things, as one of the speakers said tonight, we look at the consequences, and sometimes we sort of take back what we said. We've had a family here in town that has repeated infestations. We also, when we went looking for a way to relocate them, because we really didn't think they could stay in their house, dead animals in the yard, roaches and vermin, things that are outlined in our nuisance ordinance and things that make it unsafe and our Board of Health frowns on. We still didn't have a way to relocate them. We went to Ministerial Association, we went to the well, we tried to figure out if there was something that the Greater Jefferson County Foundation might be able to do as far as temporary. But the problem is, I mean, you might get a meal ticket and a motel room for a night for these folks, but we don't have relocation possibilities. Our code enforcement officer and a gentleman whose house's floors were falling in, and he wanted to give his property to the city. We ultimately agreed to accept the property if we were allowed to remedy the nuisance there. But this gentleman, Weston, our code enforcement officer, worked with Optime, some other folks, because the gentleman was limited, to find him a place. It took us weeks. We stalled what we were doing as far as our enforcement to try to make that work. Weston did a good job of finding a relocation, but imagine that if we have to apply that to dozens of nuisance letters we send out every month, and we have other places that we think don't know if that's going to be fixable or not. But we do not have another relocation solution at the moment. That's what we're up against too. So the relocation is a real consideration. We aren't equipped to relocate people in this community. We look for some of our associations and foundations to help with that. And it used to be what I call the back door at the ministry or the rectory at the parish, and you'd get a helper for a day or two, and that would be enough. But anymore, it's not enough. And you know what the solution's going to be that long term. We've had a presentation here at the council by someone who is a person who's lived both ends of life. He's been very successful, and he's also been homeless. And he helped come up with a roster of different things that are points of assistance in the community. About all we can do is try to be as informed as we can about what you can do for people. But that isn't where we have to go right now in an ordinance like this. This is just a piece of the pie. This is just standards that if we get these standards in place as far as better definitions under this international code, we're still going to be in a situation where we have to deal with what this district court says. This is what you have to tell us your procedures are. If the speakers here tonight say that it's confusing or that not everybody understands how it works, that's on us, because we're supposed to make it as clear as possible what you can do.
So,
If-
Mr.
Yeah.
Morrissey, if I may ask, you're suggesting that the city table the proposed amendment with the idea that we would add some additional language to it?
Yeah, I am expecting to know what the city of Orange City is going to do as far as an appeal. They may take the position that the policy of their council is not to go as far as this court did in restraining them. And they may come back with an ordinance that they think is a better solution, and they might want to have an argument about it with the Iowa Supreme Court.
How long is it? What's the timetable do you think it would be?
Well, if it's an Iowa Supreme Court appeal, it could be a year and a half.
Are you suggesting we table the motion?
Not for a year
What-
and a half.
I'm not sure,
I think you probably, if we do something like the city of Zion, Illinois did in a federal lawsuit over there, and they took parts of their ordinances and expanded on them. If we put in that we should have a way to define what our standards are for getting an administrative search warrant, as far as, if it is any one of the things that are in our nuisance ordinance constitutes probable cause. That's a word that the court used repeatedly.
So do you mean
Yeah.
adding more protections for the homeowner or the
More
renter
for the homeowner.
in terms of due
The-
process?
The other reason we want to do that is the homeowner has a different kind of stake. It's the old Magna Carta, every man's home is his castle, private single-family residence owner versus rentals where there is a commercial objective, and it's a different playing field as far as owners and landlords versus tenants, compared to you and I going home to our castle tonight. It's been recognized as a distinction for 800 years of common law, so, and it's in all our statutes. So if we define what it takes to get the warrant, we don't necessarily have to adopt criminal search warrant standards, but what this court is saying is, and what the Minnesota Supreme Court said was, you need to have some standards. You need to have something that you say is the probable cause to knock on the door and say, I'd like to check, we think that that moldy spot on the back wall of your kitchen is serious enough that we're either gonna inspect or we're gonna go get a warrant. But
Would
we'd
you
like to
propose
work
some additional language to the
Yeah,
ordinance?
I'm gonna propose a page of this ruling with 7 standards that the Minnesota Supreme Court suggested should be in an ordinance. And it's gonna parallel with about 5 of them from an Ohio case. And at that point, you don't have to agree with them. You might want some of them, and you might not want some of them, and I'm sure Weston might want some of them, and he might not want some of them. But the idea is that you have defined standards that you can point to, even if they're not the ones the court might have thrown on the table. Also, that you've got a way for the person who is being entered to ask for an opportunity to be heard. And in criminal search warrants, it works a little different, because you're not going to ask the person that is being approached about their criminal activity if we can have an argument about whether we're looking for your drug package or not.
Mr. Morrissey,
It just doesn't work.
would it make sense to put this back to committee so it could be reviewed on a more intimate level rather than such a large, where they are literally going through it, and obviously you would be present to
Right.
contribute? Would it make
Yeah,
sense
I
to go back
just-
to committee?
Yeah, in the last 3 or 4 hours, I got the ruling from the city attorney out
Doesn't
of
make
Orange
sense.
City. So there's
So-
obviously more to study.
Yeah.
You all should see the ruling. We all should be talking about who gets a chance to be heard, what they get a chance to be heard on, whether it is required in every instance where we do a search, or whether it's only those situations where we have a refusal. And that's not all defined yet. There is a whole section of the amended ordinance that you're talking about that talks about inspection and recourse. But it isn't this section.
It's a separate section.
Something we've
So
had
let's,
for many
let's,
cities.
let's, council, if you're open to it, I think we should take the suggestion of tabling this, taking this back to property committee and reviewing, you know, what he has, and I would certainly ask the public to come, and if you have specific suggestions, to share that with your council members prior to that even, so they have a heads up. I just like to say one other thing, that the city has proven not to be heavy-handed, in my view. The house that John was talking about that we may acquire, that house has been empty for 20 years. It could have been torn down 20 years ago. So, because at the time, I had a lot of complaints from neighbors at that time that something be done with that house. And I was on the council at that time, and I brought it up, and we got all the way to the point of tearing it down, and at that time, the city didn't have any money to tear it down. So it's been an eyesore for 20 years, and I can appreciate the comments here, and I appreciate the fact that, yes, there was an identifier of over 500 houses that are substandard. However, we have one code enforcement officer, and, you know, again, he's not going to be heavy-handed to go to every 500. He can't deal. That's too much. He can't deal with that. So, you know, I think if you look at what's happened in the past, we truly looked at the processes that have happened. The city has not been heavy-handed. I can't speak to something that happened in the past that maybe somebody entered somebody's house and shouldn't have. I can appreciate that if that did happen. But we'll definitely try to be attuned to that. And I think Weston maybe wanted to say one particular thing.
I do. Because the people are here, I want to address the 566 houses, how those are identified and what those actually mean to us.
Okay.
For one thing, to let you know, I don't think there's anybody in our office that even knows what those addresses are or who those people are. We are not targeting 566 houses like you kind of make it out to be. Those houses were identified through the Iowa State assessment, which was built off of the assessor's their evaluation of the house. So a house can be in good condition, but it has things that has happened to it that has dropped the value of it, that drops the ranking in it and puts it into a poorer condition. Okay? Those aren't the things that we're going to see this really affect. So they are an indication of things that are happening in our community as far as the houses, but it doesn't set that we are trying to go after 566 houses. Matter of fact, I'm not trying to go after any house. I don't think anybody in here is. I think the idea is to try and help people, and sometimes it takes a little bit of a heavy hand to get people to move on things and to understand that they are losing one of their biggest assets that they could ever have, the house. Some people just need help to get to other places, and it starts a conversation and helps us get them to the resources like Josh Larrabee and Vita, the programs they have, helping them get into our low-income houses. And we talk about there's not any housing out there. Working with Wagon Wheel this past month or 2 months on some problems they've had there, and working through that with them, those management group has 3 different rent-assisted program or places in Fairfield. We have 14 empty apartments there. So we have places for people to go. They just might need help getting there. And they might need the push to get there also. One of the other things I want to address while I have a chance because I think it's a misconception by some of the people in the group that when we go into a house, you look at it from the standard that it was built at the time it was built. So a house that was built with knob and tube wiring isn't going to get written up for knob and tube wiring, because that's what it was built at for that code at that time. And what we would have a problem with when you get written up for knob and tube is if you have a fire and then we have to replace it, you wouldn't allow them to go back with knob and tube wiring. We would say you need to upgrade to the current standard for wiring. So I think that you're taking a little bit of what the code has and misinterpreting as to what we're looking at, what we're doing for standards. There's also, if you read this, there's lots of ways to appeal. You know, my judgment isn't the last judgment. You have a chance to go to council, appeals board, and then if we had to go to a judge, there's going to be a judgment also. It's not coming straight from me or necessarily from the council as to what we're doing. This is, I agree, it's not a very big book, and it is a little bit vague, but if you read into it and you understand it, these same people make up all the international building codes. And if you have something that is a question or a standard that you don't know how to identify, you can go back to those international building codes, and it says that right in there, that this code is built off of those as a maintenance code. Not a building code, but a maintenance code. And it says that when you do major renovations, that you need to bring those things up to code. So.
Thank you, Weston.
Okay,
Good points.
John, if I might. So the code enforcement.
Ray, will you please come to the microphone?
I'm sorry. This is just a quick question. So if we adopt this ordinance, the code enforcement officer, he would be a state licensed electrician if he's coming in to check your electricity, state licensed?
No.
No.
He's a designate of the council through our planning office and our zoning office. That is what our inspector is in our ordinance. If he needs the assistance of the state electrical department or a certified electrician, he'll have them on site. And you've done that before,
Okay,
haven't you,
because
Weston?
I just heard that they, that
Yeah, he's not
somebody was hiring a new person to come in and do this and.
Yeah, he's not presuming to have all of the
Okay, no, that's
certifications
fine,
for
that's
all of the
fine.
things, no.
Yeah. And I think we have one more question, and then we'll take it back to council. Chuck, do you want to come up? You've got a question.
As some of you know, my voice is kind of impaired. I can probably get down to this. Can you hear me okay? My name is Charles Espy, sometimes known as Chuck. And I've been a businessman and a resident along with my wife, Fairfield, for 50 years. And we have always been proud of Fairfield and love living here. We think that Fairfield has given us a lot, and we think we've given some back. So I want to speak of, just briefly, that when I drive around some of the parts of town that are not very well maintained, that we've got some areas that really need help. And I think a start is to pass this international code. Now, what John has brought up, obviously, is adding more complication to it. But I was at a social gathering yesterday, and one of the people there is the code enforcement officer in another town in Iowa. They have this code, and they've had it for many years, this guy is the code enforcement officer. They do not have any problems. They do not invade people's homes. They follow all the due process that the city council has instructed them on. So I think the problem is I'm talking to this article that was in the Ledger a couple weeks ago, very well written article by a lady who is saying things I'm sure she thinks are true. I'm quoting from the article. It says, "It is well and good to claim that there are grants available, but we all know that it's going to apply to a very small number of people." That is not true. And I realize that people are scared if they're in a home and they have a limited income, they don't have a lot of places to go. But we have resources that can help these people. Just in the last few days, I've made contacts with as many as 6 different agencies that help people exactly like this. All the way from Area 15 to USDA to FEDA to the Fairfield Volunteer Center and Habitat for Humanity. All of these are ready, willing, and able to help the type of people that we're talking about fix up their homes if that's what it takes to keep them there. Or like Weston said, if they're ready to transition to another place. Right now, didn't you say there are 13 units available?
14 units.
14. And I know in checking with some of these low interest and no interest loan programs that they are underutilized. There are people, we have volunteers in this community that can help the type of people we're talking about with modification to their home, new roofs, bad foundations, all that type of thing. These resources are there, folks. And I know of a family foundation, as an example. If the council agrees to go through with this after John gets done with his additional items and so forth, if and when this gets passed, I know of a family foundation, excuse me, that would be willing to put up seed money to train volunteers or some staff people to help people if they want to apply for some of these loans. I mean, this paperwork is a blizzard, we all know that. So if we can have people, smart volunteers that can help people do this. I know FEDA, as an example, is plugged into several of these programs. Now Josh is leaving us, unfortunately, but FEDA is a great resource that we can use. My point is, there are resources out there to help people that are in these kind of situations. But we need to understand, a lot of these people are scared. They don't know where to go. And folks, we can help them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I'm gonna pass out.
I can take those, Chuck.
My wife and I spend the winters in, I don't have enough for everybody. You need that. St. Petersburg, Florida is facing the same type of thing that Fairfield is facing. They have over 800 properties that should be torn down or demolished, whatever. And they put their code enforcement to work without making anybody homeless. They have places for these people to go. And this is a great, great series of articles. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate that.
I'd like to,
Okay.
Let's all make this work together.
Amen.
I'd like to make a motion to refer ordinance 1232 back to property committee.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Please call the roll.
Anderson?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
So is that good enough as a table? We didn't say table it till next time, but I think that's what you meant, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it'll
Well,
come back
no,
when
if
they
you
revise
take-
it, right?
The advantage of referring it to committee is it comes back when they're done with
When
it.
they're done with it, yeah.
So there's no time
frame on it.
limit, there's no date certain. When they get finished with it, it comes back for the third reading.
Is that appropriate, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done it
Okay.
before.
Okay, just want to double check. Okay, thank you, everybody, for your patience and all your comments. We
And
really
you all,
appreciate it.
the property committee meetings are also public. You're invited to sit in and listen, be there.
And I would appreciate if your ward reps, hopefully will contact you too when that is, so.
Paul, just really quick, out of, because you are chairman of that, do you mind if we forward the emails we've gotten as council people, if it didn't go to everybody and it just came to us? Would you appreciate if we forward, because I have an inbox full of them.
Yeah, he wants all 20 of them.
Yes.
I mean, would that be helpful as you consider the points that are of concern?
Yes, it would be.
I will make sure I'll forward those to you.
That'd be
Great, thank you. Okay, under the mayor's report, I have several things. First off, let's do the board appointments. We have library board appointments. Brenda Diers and Motier Haskins replacing Kate Van Pelt and Joe Stever. And Mo Haskins and Brenda are here. Would you please come to the podium real quick and just introduce yourselves? I've known Brenda for years and years. She was away from Fairfield for a while and then came back home. And you want to just tell your story in 3 sentences or 5?
Okay, thanks. I'm Brenda Diers. I grew up, was born and raised here, graduated from the high school. I see a few people that I know. I moved out to California 2 years after I graduated and moved back 6 years ago, work at the high school as a para. And of course, at the pharmacy.
Great, thank
Thanks
you.
for the red shirt.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm Motier Haskins. Most of you I know from before, right? And I've been here 17 years in Fairfield. I'm still employed at the University of Iowa School of Social Work, and I have time and energy. So I'm happy to be on the board.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
the library board has requested that we approve Brenda and Motier, again, to replace Kate Van Pelt and Joe Stever, who are going off the board. Their terms are up.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Anderson, second by Toohill. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. And then on the Carnegie Museum Board, again, this is, the Carnegie Museum Board has requested Joni Stever and John Godwin to replace doesn't say.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I don't have it. I thought I did. Who they're replacing.
Are these just positions that are up or people
Yes,
stepping down?
I think there are positions that are just up. So Joni Stever and John Godwin, if you want, I can email you who they're replacing, because I got to find out for Rebecca anyway. So I apologize. I thought I had that here with me.
Motion to approve.
Okay, moved by Anderson.
Second.
Second by Toohill. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Great, thank you very much. I have a proclamation to read. This is regarding Fairfield Productions. Whereas Fairfield Productions is a community-based, volunteer-supported, nonprofit educational organization that has been telling the history of Fairfield and surrounding areas through their documentary films since March of 2016, and whereas they have produced 5 award-winning chapters of the Fairfield History Series, deeply researched documentary films that bring to life the diverse and fascinating stories of the people who helped make Fairfield one of the most talked about small towns in America. And whereas these films serve as proof that anyone with enough passion and commitment can assemble the resources needed to capture the history of where they live and bring it to life for today's and future generations. And whereas the 5th chapter in the series, Parsons, is planned to premiere October 6th through the 8th of this year at Cinema Fairfield at the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center, and coincide with a final reunion of Parsons College alumni and faculty. And whereas Fairfield Productions is making all previous films available to viewers free of charge during the week before the Parsons premiere. Therefore, I, Mayor Connie Boyer, do hereby declare October 1 through October 8th, 2023 as Fairfield History Series Week, and encourage all citizens to learn more about their local history through these films. And we hope there's a great turnout for the Parsons film. So.
What time?
And thank you to Dick and Jason and all the musicians and all the people who did interviews and everything that's happened. It's been amazing. So I'm really looking forward to the Parsons.
What time will they be showing those?
Is it 7:30? And is there a matinee on Saturday and Sunday?
Yep, 2:30.
2:30, okay. So, hope you all get out to the movie. The League of Cities always does a If I Were a Mayor contest for 7th graders, and this has gone out to the 7th grade teachers, but encourage, if you got a 7th grader at school, to consider entering. We did have a student last year who got in the finalists, went up to the State House and got to meet the Lieutenant Governor. I would like to set a work session for, I think it's November 18th, the middle of November. I think it's a Saturday. Is that?
That is a Saturday.
Yeah. If that's works for y'all. Or if you want to check your calendars and let Doug know. We'd go from 9 to noon. Does that sound okay?
18th?
On the 18th? Okay. Then we will know who our ward reps are, et cetera, and then we can go through a work session. So again, if you have something for that work session that you want on the agenda, please let Doug or myself know. I think the last thing that I have is League of Cities review. Doug Flornay, Paul Gandy, Doug Reinert, and I all went up. Does anybody want to say any comments about anything? What you learned?
Yeah, I attended, I think you could attend 7 or 8 different sessions, all related, of course, to city government and the city governance. And I've always found, I've gone to, this is my 3rd, I believe, if you can find 1 or 2 nuggets of information, of things you can use when you come back to the city, then it's worth it. And I found more than that, but there are particularly 2 sessions that stand out to me that were very interesting. One was a session given by a couple of Iowa State University professors, and they were focused on rural towns. And the interesting thing is that they looked at rural towns from a different perspective. They said that the fact is there are thousands of rural towns in the Midwest, and most of them are going to continue to go down in population, decrease in population. And what they were suggesting is it's not a bad thing. They found that when many towns go down in population, they decrease in population, but for those who remain, their quality of life improves, it goes up. So it is possible for a town to stay the same in population or even decrease in population, but actually the living there is better. So that was an interesting way of looking at, I know, at least for me, I'm always looking at how to, grow Fairfield, grow bigger, make it bigger is better for some reason, but it's not necessarily the case. So it's just an interesting point of view that they offered. We had a couple of motivational speakers at lunch and a dinner, and that's always interesting. That's a tough job, you're you're hungry, you're eating, you're talking, and they're trying to get you excited about something, I'm not even sure what. Making lists and doing this and going out and starting tomorrow with a whole new life by just taking their 3 points and using them. Or you can write them on your hand with your pen. But anyway, there was 2 or 3 points when they gave those presentations that I thought were useful. And so, and it was good to spend time with fellow council members and our mayor and talk about city governance. So I've always found those useful and look forward to the next one, which next year will be in Sioux City. This one was in Cedar Rapids.
Doug, you want to share anything?
Well, I didn't bring my notes with me, but yeah, we all attended sessions all day on Thursday and Friday, and they were informative. I was a little disappointed with the offerings this year, but by and large, it's always positive experiences. Like you say, catch a few things here and there that are useful. So it's worth going to.
Doug, you want to share anything?
Sure, I can parrot everyone else. That was my first time to go to, and actually it was my first time in Cedar Rapids. So I really enjoyed the experience and got to talk to some of my colleagues and learned a few things about Iowa state law. And there are some things that are different that I'm unfamiliar with. That's kind of why I went, is to make sure that I can understand those things, and I look forward to going next year. And I enjoyed the company that I had and got to listen to a lot of experience, and I appreciate that very much.
Right.
I think we stayed in 4. It's a very well attended, so we ended up staying in 4 different hotels because we applied at different times. But I got to stay in the DoubleTree, which I like because they have these delicious chocolate chip cookies. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I very much appreciate that. Helped me score some points.
So a couple of sessions that I attended, leveraging volunteers to meet strategic goals. So that really got my wheels a-turning, and look forward to talking to the volunteer center. I was quite fascinated with the mayor and 2 police officers, 2 Hispanic police officers from Clear Lake, and all the things that they do to connect to their community. They have a very diverse community. I mean, I thought we had a diverse community. They got us beat, people, by quite a ways.
Is it
Clear Lake, yeah, Clear Lake.
Clear, okay.
And so it was really neat to hear some experiences that these 2 Hispanic officers have had that grew up there, and how they're connecting with their community. They do a lot of pop-up things. So again, got my wheels a turning up here. The other thing was that I thought was really good is a mayor city council orientation program, and so I'm looking forward to putting that really together and having it a little more a detailed program instead of, I mean, they start like right now. So if you're going to be on the ballot, you're probably going to be hearing from myself, and we're going to have a little session even before election, just to kind of go through a couple things and ask questions and find out things. Yeah, and then we'll have one afterwards.
Your story reminded me of a session I attended on crisis intervention training with a couple of mental health specialists with an officer, and they're paired up, and they both get cross-trained, the mental health specialist in law enforcement aspects, law enforcement in mental health aspects, even to the extent where the mental health worker walks relative to the officer when they're approaching a situation, depending on what handed officer. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting. They had it's a big city model. They're trying to work on a county level model for rural Iowa, but I thought it'd be worthwhile if the chief of police could come and talk to us and the public at some point about the kinds of training that they do and the innovations that they carry out when it comes to mental health issues and law enforcement.
Yeah. So just on that topic, just so you know, there's the new number 988 that you can connect in crisis and or just for support services. The mental health, Jefferson County Mental Health and Wellness Alliance will be at the high school this Friday. We'll have a table at the football game, I believe. And also Saturday there is a suicide awareness walk at Chautauqua Park from noon until 3. They will also be there they'll have a table there then. But in light of that, we're trying to get out that information that,
It's a constant struggle to get the information out.
Yeah.
Like John
Yep.
said. There's a lot of resources that people aren't aware of,
Yep.
including what's on the agenda for the council.
So,
So it surprises
Yeah.
people, and it's hard to get the message out.
yeah. Great. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Appreciate it. City Attorney report?
Yes. I won't talk anymore about Orange City, okay? We'll save that for the committee, but there's a lot to talk about. We've been, and this is Weston and I, in court over one of the landmark buildings on the square. I'm not going to go through 3 pages of ruling on that, but what has happened in the last couple weeks, we have an order from the court that requires the owner to provide us certain documentation about improvements that have to be made concerning the status of a building that's basically been red tagged everywhere in the building now by the city. There are provisions that if things don't happen by certain times, there will be liquidated damages until something does happen. That I think I'm just going to make available to you on email in the next couple days, but it's something that Weston will be watching daily, I suspect. And there are some people that are contractor, consultant type people that he will also be able to verify things with. Second thing is, I talked to you the last couple meetings about being besieged by certain filings by sovereign citizens. And we've had 5 different, what I call altered or forged subpoenas quashed by our local court. We've had dismissals 5 times by our local court of other documents that were associated with that. That kind of came to a head with a filing against myself, Weston McKee, the magistrate, Steve Howard, Small, Julie Harvey, our police department member, and Dave Thomas, our chief, in United States District Court, Southern District. And preposterous as it sounds, the application for status for a suit made it through the magistrate review that starts something and made it to the actual chief judge of the Southern District. While this was going on, we had filed a memo to our local court that explained the authority of our court on a page, the authority of our city on a page, the authority of me as a prosecutor on a page, and asked our court to take judicial notice, and then this was sent off to Des Moines electronically with a request that the court take notice of our local processes down here to weigh in for certain purposes that court does in review. We still haven't been served with the stuff that got filed in court, but it's on file up there to the extent that the court, when it reviewed it, it said that if the court determines that the matter is either frivolous or malicious or fails to state a claim on which relief can be granted, the court shall dismiss any such case. Tried to load the file up there so the court would see what's been going on down here. The court then went on to say that the things cited in the filings up there raise questions about whether these are appropriate for federal jurisdiction. Sanctions can be imposed. And then it goes on to indicate what the allegations were in the complaints against us, which included claims against individuals and the city as an entity, which involve human rights abuses and corruption. And then a second recitation from a federal executive order that talked about sanctions for international human trafficking. Now, this sounds preposterous, but it took a chief judge of the federal district court to decide it was preposterous and dismiss it as frivolous and unfounded and failing to state a claim on which relief can be granted. Why this is important is that the next time that we get a bundle of mail with this kind of stuff in it, we're entitled under Rule 11 of our own rules of procedure and under the federal court to have the court sanction the people that are doing this. And that means the court can enter judgments against them for violating the court's rule of dismissal and determination of frivolous suit. And the court, I'll have to start my clock on this, but the court can also award attorney's fees for the trouble we're put to as far as this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at people here. I know Becca's been sued, and we defended her. Doug has been named on some of these things that we had quashed. When we are dealing with this stuff, what seems to be the habit is that we'll get done with one individual. I happen to think this individual won't get it. We'll probably do this again anyway and set herself up. But we also have 7 or 8 others that also, they step in and fill shoes, file the same kind of stuff, and you get the mail from a different individual. So same caution this time as the last time. If you get anything served on you, or even if you get certified mail, let us know about it, because this just continues. And in the meantime, it's just intended to disrupt us as far as enforcing things like your nuisance ordinances. And this whole thing that goes all the way through the chief judge of this Iowa U.S. District Court dismissing it is over our attempt to make this particular individual get a building permit for a deck. It's a $25 fee, and it's the first part of the ordinance. There's nothing complicated about it at all. But it's gone this far, and it's taken all summer, and it's probably going to continue on through the winter. So, that's enough said about that. I'm looking at Tom, and Tom and I were at the 28E agency meeting last week. Mr. Libby, the head of Care Ambulance, was there. Our members of the 28E agency board were there. Out in the hallway were some people that were interested in the transition to the new ambulance service. We just had some conversation about that with one of the Board of Supervisors at noon that invites everybody to go out and take a look at the new 3-bay drive-through out at the old branch bank of First National. They're done with it. It's ready to operate. They could pull the ambulances in tomorrow. What's happened at the ambulance board is we have been negotiating with Care and Mr. Libby to try to have a very easy transition into Jefferson County taking over the operation. And that includes delivery over of the ambulances to us by Care so that they can be certified again by the state. That, I believe, is supposed to happen this weekend. It also includes buying some equipment off of the Care people, something called a striker cot that is about a $30,000 hydraulic electrified cart that basically is it's a save your back stretcher is what I would call it. And also some other kinds of devices that are unique to the ambulances. Fortunately, Mr. Libby and Care felt that makes sense to have those as part of the transition. Gave the group a very advantageous price, which we ran past the hospital CEO, and he said, yeah, that's about where we were thinking they'd land. And we, before we were done, our board authorized us to, within about $10,000 or $12,000 of where we were thinking we were going to be, as far as monies that were mediated last end of January into February. We were supposed to be paying some of that over. We've been paying each month, and there is an accumulation on our part, on the county's part, and on the hospital's part that could have been $100,000 by October. Right now, where we are is there was an offer made in writing by the county attorney last minute before the meeting to give over a substantial part of the money if we could do a smooth transition. We, at the board level, and I know Tom was not in favor of 100% of the money going to CARE. That would not be an understatement, would it, Tom?
No,
We
not
were
at all.
supposed to be hearing from CARE's attorney with documentation or explanations for different times over the months when there was missed service, or there were supposed to be 2 ambulances in service and there was only 1. Or they had an incident where somebody got mixed up about something because of transport differences, and the fact that midstream on the mediated services, they discontinued doing the local transport versus the 911 emergency transport. That was very troubling to the board. So we expected that there would be some explanations, but there would also be documentation. While that was going on, the county, through the dispatch center, the hospital through the emergency room records, were able to come up with most of those incidents, even though we didn't get that information from CARE's attorney. And after back and forth at the table in closed session, we ultimately proposed that we would pay the money that was reported by the 28E CFO, Brent, I want to say Brent Favre, but that's not his name.
Fager, I think. Fager?
Fager,
Yes.
yes. Sorry, Brent. He had $79,999 or something like that. And we went in with an offer to Mr. Libby of $70,000 that everybody was ready to settle for. He wanted the full bundle to start with, but he came off of it, and we ended up at the $79,999, which he knew was all the money we had in the account at the time. So, you know, it was one of those things where we kind of discussed at closed session, what have we got to use to negotiate without adding to the pot and going back to our respective boards and getting more authority. And even Tom agreed that we could use up most of what we had. I think I'm not overstating that either, Tom. But
I guess and two of the big major points of that are that it does get turned over to the county October 1st. They'll have the ambulances 2 days early to inspect and everything done. And it eliminates any future litigation between us and CARE.
The other thing that money's supposed to buy is covenant not to sue and joint mutual releases, and those are supposed to be going on as we speak. I talked to Vanessa, the hospital's representative, and she hadn't seen anything yet. Chauncey was in court today, and he's got voice messages from me. I suspect the next couple days we will be looking at those kinds of documents. We had a covenant not to sue when we left the experience with Midwest Ambulance and ended up with dismissal of a suit we were in against them. As far, or they had against us, but as far as this situation, I think everything will be dismissed. The releases and covenants will be in each other's hands. You'll get presented that stuff. Hopefully it's all going to happen this week. The one thing that's supposed to happen between the attorneys is a call to the district judge to have them set up an escrow account in the clerk of court's office so that our monies can just be paid in there. And when these documents are filed, as far as the covenants and the mutual dismissals and releases, the money can be released by the clerk. So that's probably the teethiest thing we can do as far as making sure it happens, and it happens before October 1st. So we're at crunch time, and we think we've got it settled.
Great, awesome, great news.
Do you have
Thank you.
anything else, Tom? I didn't
No,
mean to short you. All right,
Thank you, appreciate it.
all right. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Great, committee and board reports, the Board of Adjustment report, is somebody gonna report on that?
Yes.
So there was one variance approved for Woodside Circle, I believe, Lucas Helling. Per Iowa code, the council can ask the board, what?
No.
Thank you, oh no. Can ask the Board of Adjustment to reconsider that variance if they feel it's not appropriate, which is why we let the council know of any variances which were approved. The other requests in front of Board of Adjustment were not approved, so.
Great, thank you very much. Property committee?
Thank you, Mayor. The property committee met this evening. A number of members of city government and staff were present. Fortunately, we had a quorum for the property committee. We're down to 2 with the resignation of Ms. Esty, but Martha Rasmussen and myself were present, so we had a quorum. Also present was Melanie Carlson, our city engineer, public works director, Doug Reiner, our city administrator, Weston McKee, our code compliance officer. We had a citizen, Alexandra Moreno, a developer, John Morsi, our city attorney, and our mayor, Connie Boyer. We had one item to discuss, one item on that agenda this evening, that was disposal of property at 504 South 6th Street. Council, remember we had a property that was, I believe, given to the city, 504 South 6th Street. I'll ask Justin, what was the name, Weston, of the gentleman who gave the property? Kevin Franklin. You recall that property was given to the city some months ago, and the question now before the city is, what do we do with the property? Obviously, the property is in a very poor condition. There are a number of options that were presented to us, and I applaud the work done by both our code administrator, our code compliance officer rather, and our city administrator in putting together various options for the city to consider. I think the property committee thinks that this is going to be something that's going to be ongoing. We're trying to establish a pattern when we find property that needs, that's in such condition that it's unlivable, uninhabitable, which this property was. The city has to evaluate and decide what's the best thing to do for the safety of the citizens, for the betterment of the city. And so there were options that were offered to us by our city staff. They included a city demo, and then prepare and release a request for a proposal for a development. They included the city demo, the demo being demolition, at fair market value with no development agreement. Another option was for the city to sell as is with a requirement to tear down the property. Another option was for the city to sell as is with requirement to tear down and redevelop the property. Fifth option was the city to tear it down and to donate the property to a nonprofit. And the sixth option was for the city to work with a developer or a nonprofit to construct a Homes for Iowa new home. So we discussed in some detail these various options, the pros and cons, and it is a sense of the committee that the best option, the one with the most flexibility, and for the benefit of the citizens for the city, is the option 1, which is the city will either demolish the property or contract out the demolition, or possibly have our fire department to conduct a controlled burn, but in any case, raise the property because its condition is dangerous, quite frankly. And then we would prepare and release a request for proposal, or RFP, with the idea that there'll be a requirement that a purchaser would develop the property. We think it's the property we believe is a valuable property, and that I believe it's near, what is it near?
The school system.
Near the school system.
It's on South 6th.
On South 6th, so it has a size such that perhaps it may be developed into a duplex, maybe a triplex, which could be a profitable situation for a developer, and also provide a good housing for
It's a fairly large corner lot too. So
for a number of families. So it's our sense and our recommendation to the council that we instruct the city staff to go forward with city demolition. Again, either we're going to demolish the city staff and funds, or we contract out to find someone to demolish the property. And also, we're going to consider, they're going to do additional research on whether or not it can perhaps a controlled burn by the fire department is a better choice. But in any case, we're recommending to the council that we instruct the city to proceed with plans to demolish the property. Once it's demolished, then we're looking at preparing and releasing an RFP with a development agreement in that RFP. So I make a motion for exactly those instructions to the city staff.
Second that.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Gandy, second by Anderson. Any discussion, questions?
So the motion exactly here is just to go forward with the demolition. The next step, the RFP, will come before council again.
I think my motion is that we're going to go forward with the demolition and then come forward. I suspect, yes.
I think we should do it in steps myself.
Yeah. We're not going to release a RFP without city council approval.
Well, I
That
just want
makes
to make sure
sense.
we're not approving it now without seeing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's what the motion is
So
intending.
the motion is to go forward with the
The
demolition.
demolition is what I understood and seconded.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Do you have a date that you want that accomplished by?
As I understand in talking with our city administrator and co-compliance officer, there's some additional research they have to do in order to determine what's the best option in terms of whether the city were to demolish the property, contract out to have someone demolish, or do a co-controlled burn. So that may take a couple of months. Yeah. I would add that this is consistent with one other presentation that I attended at the Iowa League of Cities, had to do with housing, rural housing specifically. And I will tell you that as this is a priority for our city to find affordable, sustainable housing, quality housing, it is a clear priority of the state. And as Mr. Espy was saying, there are a number of avenues of support offered to homeowners or potential homeowners at the state level. Of course, we have them at the city and county level, certainly at the city level. So we are doing things. I think this is one example. We are doing things to bring us and to develop more and affordable and sustainable and quality housing.
Great, thank you. So there is a motion on the floor. Any other additional questions? Now, please call the roll.
Gandy.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Okay, administrator and department reports. Project update. Do you want to go, Melanie?
Yeah. So one of the things that the contractor, Woodruff Construction, who's the contractor for step 3, asked me to bring to the public's attention. So the trail is closed over near the lift station, and they've had a lot of instances of trespassing. It's not necessarily that anyone is stealing anything, but they do worry for people's safety. We have a 25-foot deep hole in there, and the barricades are there for a reason. We will get the trail open as soon as we can. That's a continued discussion at our meetings every month, is when can we get this open, where are we at as far as getting it open. But we do strongly encourage the public to find a different section of the trail that they enjoy. And I know that having a loop to go around is a great benefit, but unfortunately, we have to improve our infrastructure as well.
Is this between Libertyville Road and the 4-lane? Kind
Yes.
of about Liberty Drive area-ish? Back down with it, down a little.
Like if you went
Down a little
the
south of that.
entrance to Jefferson County
East,
Park and
west.
went straight south,
Yes.
kind of that
Okay.
general
Yep.
area. Yep. On Highway 1, I've been sending you guys emails regarding the staging on that, but we did open up this section of pavement between Buchanan and the well. So the well can now be accessed from Buchanan. It can't be accessed from Fillmore. You still have to go around, but at least you're not going all the way around down south. And right now the contractor's working on storm sewer then between the well and the roundabout. So that's the section that's currently completely closed to through traffic, to all traffic. And then lastly, with the capital improvements reserve fund being on the ballot in November, I will be posting some stuff on the city's Facebook page regarding what SURF is, clarifying the newspaper article that it is not increasing, it's replacing a levy that's falling off this year, and talking about some of the different projects that have been funded over the last 10 years with SURF. It's really something that's impacted all of our departments, and so I encourage you to obviously share that with your constituents as well, but it'll be one of the ways that we plan on getting information out to the voters about SURF, since it is important to all of our departments, but funding some of those general fund items that we don't have a revenue source for otherwise. So, thank you.
Administrator report.
So I had the great opportunity to once again go around with one of the department heads, and this one happened to be Calvin Todd, the director of Parks and Recreation. We went to every single park and park property that we had, and I really enjoy all of my tours. I'm one of those people that I will crawl around inside, the wastewater treatment plant and crawl around wherever it may be so I can actually get boots on the ground and see what we're facing. We had a really good conversation. He's got some great ideas that we need to keep on improving, and we'll continue to do so. We have 104 city properties, and I'm going through them one at a time. And it's going to take a minute, but we're getting there. So pretty excited about that. I sent on the Alliant Energy lease proposal to legal counsel, and we've had a small brief discussion and also out to the airport manager. And I'm very satisfied, but council may have something different than that to say about the lease and what they want to do, and hopefully we'll get to do this and then maybe future projects as well. So once we get that green light, then we'll bring that back to council, and then we'll move that forward.
We moved to go to property committee last time, I believe.
Did we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
But are we waiting? Are we going to? Yeah, we did.
About the lease for the
the
line?
lease. We moved to take it to property committee.
Oh.
Right. Now, are we waiting for a review from council before?
Yeah, I would like his input. So once we do that, then hopefully we can move.
I don't have it all tagged.
Okay.
I don't have it.
So, very good, very interesting read. The street superintendent and I went out to the ski club to again address that burn pile that we would like to do on that property, and we're still in communication trying to figure out what our next steps are, but we will hopefully have a resolution sometime this fall, getting that worked on. Things seem to be going well, but we'll see how things go forward. Again, I already mentioned that I've been going through city properties, and I've been looking into our tax levies and how all of this stuff is working. And it's going to take a bit, but we're doing well. I feel like it's extremely important, not only for my job, but also so that I can communicate everything that I've learned to the public so that they understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, where all of this money is being spent, and what our position in the city is and what sort of next steps. So I will continue to do those sorts of things and carry us on into the next fiscal year. We actually got the server migration for our computer system done last week, and that upgrade has helped us make our computers run a little bit faster and keep our financial systems up and going. And that's kind of what we've been doing. There's a whole lot of other things that have been happening, but just baby steps in some of the big things. That's all I have for you this evening.
Great, thank you. Any questions to our city administrator, anyone? If not, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Toohill,
Second.
second by Gandy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, council, for your time, and
I
thank you
almost
for the
seconded it,
public.
Paul. I didn't hear it.